Oh, the desktop on it. Uh, no, it's still. Go to that one. Oh, wait. So this screen's
Right. Read. Read means go. It's opposite. Click into it. And then when you finish, you push the button.
Did you? So.
Members of the public that have joined us today, we'll get underway with our council meeting for the 30th of April 2026. I'll just come to Chris McLeay for open us with a karakia. Thank you, Chris.
Kia ora, Chair and councillors. Nā whakataka taho ki te uru, whakataka taho ki te tonga, kia mikinakina ki uta, ki mataratara ki tai, he aka ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he ho hu, tiho, modi ora.
Thank you, Chris. I'll go to Dave now for a quick health and safety briefing. Thanks, Dave.
Kia ora tātou. Thank you for attending today. Just in the event of an emergency, the nearest emergency exits for you are through the main doors that you have come in on and to your right out onto the footpath. The assembly area in case of that sort of event is across the road in the park. Please use the crossing and be mindful of traffic should that occur. In any other cases, if anything should happen, please just follow the directions of staff. And if you have any queries or questions, please reach out to one of us to assist. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. So apologies.
No.
Right, okay, sorry, our deputations are up with us first. So we have two speakers today speaking on our LGNZ membership going forward. So first up is Mr. Brett Murphy. So what we're looking at today is 5 minutes, Brett, and then we'll come to councillors for any questions on what you're presenting for us today. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll also open with a prayer. Heavenly Father, God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, Yahweh, maker of heaven and earth, I pray that you would guide this council in your infinite wisdom today through the power of your Ruach HaKodesh. Lord, I thank you for your Son, the Lord Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, who will one day come back to rule and give us perfect governance. But for the time being, Lord, anoint these leaders to make decisions for the better well-being of the public. I thank you in your mighty name, Yahweh, and your Son, Yeshua HaMashiach. Amen. Okay. Greetings. I've come here today to support the motion brought by Councillor Noel Smith and seconded by Councillor Chris Hughes to remove the Waikato Regional Council from Local Government New Zealand. I thank you for staying consistent with how you voted last year. The decision, in my opinion, should be a no-brainer given 7 councils, including our 2 biggest ones, Auckland and Christchurch, have already left LGNZ, citing a boozy culture, according to Mayor Len Brown, at gatherings and a political bias highlighted with the previous CEO's attack on the Prime Minister, Christopher Luxton. We should deal with the government directly and cut out the middleman, which would obviously save money in the process. That would make sense because some of you campaigned on cutting consultants as well. My question to you all is, what value does remaining with the group give the ratepayers who you're supposed to be working for? The answer, in my opinion, is none whatsoever. As you run your personal business with such outgoings for no viable return, so it would seem to me voting to remain part of this group would only be done for selfish reasons. If you really do care about the poorest members of society, which is a platitude of the left, then you should be taking every step to cut costs rather than flogging a dead horse like you're currently doing with the train. Both make zero economic sense but pander to political ideologies. The vote itself this morning should have been straightforward, with 7 of you pledging during the campaign to remove WRC from LGNZ. But I fear that given politicians are one of the most distrusted groups in society, that narrative may be upheld today. Why is that? Because having visited the rates control team's website last week, I see your campaign promises have all been removed, which indicates that we have some shifty characters among you that will say one thing to get elected, but do the opposite when you're seated at power. It's telling that a significant portion of you do not return emails or answer your phones, which again points to a degree of cowardice in seeking the path of least resistance when you're elected to make tough decisions rather than cower to external forces and seek self-seeking agendas. It concerns me that the Taxpayers Union has been blocked from speaking today when they could have provided valuable information to the council ahead of the final decision. I note that the LGNZ CEO will speak next, so I will say as a former journalist, these proceedings are neither fair or balanced for those of you who claim to still be sitting on the fence. Chairman Mayor, you could have allowed the Taxpayers Union to speak, and frankly it's an affront to democracy that they're not allowed to address this council, which suggests to me your mind is already made up and you're trying to minimise the fallout that comes from breaking your election promise. Shame on you, sir. I'd like to remind you that when you were Strategic Policy Committee Chairman, you were quoted by the Waikato Times as saying the following: Much of what LGNZ offered was already handled by our staff in-house, and their money management is also a concern. This isn't an organisation with any financial acumen. You highlighted the council's $122,000 membership fee and additional costs as excessive. I agree with you on this assessment. So why are you changing your tune now less than 12 months later? Makes me think that the glitz and the glamour of ratepayer-funded excursions to Wellington has enticed you, or perhaps even worse, some other form of bribery, as this organisation we're discussing today fights to stay relevant. Furthermore, Councillor Dunban-Smith, you said the council should reduce unnecessary expenditure to an increasingly pro-left organisation. If that is the case, sir, then why do you want to unite with them now? Perhaps with the misguided notion that if we have a change of government in October, the decision will be reversed to abolish regional councils. Please remember the 8th promise on your website that you took down was the recognition that it was going to happen, so it shouldn't have come as a surprise when it did. I have to say to you all that you have decided to go back on your word today, that you're not fit for any kind of office, and you would quite rightly deserve the reputation of being a grifter. I want to thank Jordan Smith and Simon O'Connor for covering this story during the week. I wish to encourage all media present and watching online to please hold these men accountable if they go back on their campaign promise today. So far, the following media outlets have run stories, shown interest, or are going to provide news coverage on this meeting: Waikato Times, Waikato Business News, Reality Check Radio, The Platform, News Talk ZB, and the New Zealand Herald. This matter is not going to be hidden from public scrutiny. I encourage the media to highlight those who go back on their campaign promise and betray the voters they claim to represent. I personally do not accept delaying the vote by 12 months to give LGNZ more time to reform while investing another six-figure sum is any value to the ratepayers. I'll finish my speech where I started. We're appointed to live once, die, and face judgment, and we will all give an account to Yahweh for how we have lived. His word declares, do not be a false witness, as no liar will inherit the kingdom of heaven. Unjust scales are an abomination to him, which means by your words you will be justified, and by your words you will be condemned. For the golden rule says, do unto others as you would have done to you, because to whom much is given, much will be required. Thank you for your time, and I'm welcome to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Are there any questions? No, we have no questions at this stage. Thank you, Brett. Oh, sorry, Chris. Yes.
Not really a question. I was going to ask a question because Brett was present at most of the presentations that Ben and I attended during our campaign, and I can only thank Brett for that, and also for the courage to come in here and talk to us today. That's what Brett's saying. But if we say anything today, Brett, or do anything today which is against our campaign pledges that we made at those meetings, then hopefully that will be exposed as you. Thank you for turning up.
Robbie?
No, thanks, Brett, for coming along. I totally understand where you're coming from, but around this table, we actually have to make best decisions for the whole region, and that will be debated later on today. The environment has changed since those pledges were made.
So I'll just remind councillors that we're not outlining opinions or debating.
But I'm just saying the outline of local government has changed since we made those pledges. And so that debate will go on this afternoon and we'll talk about it.
Yeah.
So thank you. I hear what you're saying.
Once again, Brett, thank you for your presentation.
Thank you all for allowing me to be here today.
Our next speaker is Scott Necklin. What Scott up? It's the right-hand button on the microphone. Thanks, Scott. And I believe Chair Dion Swiggs is online as well. Is that correct, Dave? Over to you, Scott.
Kia ora koutou katoa ko Scott Necklin, tōku ingoa. Thank you very much for having us come along today to talk to you about your LGNZ membership. So I do appreciate the time. Online, we've got Chair Dion Swiggs, Chair of Environment Canterbury. He is also your Regional Sector Chair at LGNZ and chairs the Regional Sector meeting. I'm going to hand to Dion in a moment to make some introductory comments, and then I will just follow up with some further comments. But I just want to acknowledge, before I do hand to Dion, I just want to acknowledge the sad passing of Alan Livingston. You're obviously former councillor and former chair. I did have the pleasure of working with Alan for a few years and met him on a number of occasions. So just wanted to acknowledge his passing. I'll hand over to Dion now to make some initial comments, and then I will follow up before we have questions.
Hey, kia ora, Chair Warren, kia ora Council. It's good to see you all. Sorry that I can't be there with you in person today. Travel is quite difficult getting between the islands, but I really appreciate the chance that we have here. Yeah, as Scott said, I'm the chair of Canterbury Regional Council and also the chair of the regional sector. And really, what we're coming to you today is really wanted to just outline that the National Council has quite changed. LGNZ is different. We have, over the last 6 months, a really big leadership reset within LGNZ. We've got the new Vice President, the new President and the new CE. And the direction from the board or from the LGNZ board is that we're really wanting to focus on the regional sector leadership and that a regional sector voice is really quite important within the conversations, especially with the simplification for local government. And a number of the councils that we do work with around the country are finding good value in trying to coordinate some of these conversations that we're having around what the future of local government looks like, especially in the regional sector, our regional voice. We do have quite a bit of a different tone. We're starting to notice the engagement that we're having with the government with this reset they're starting to listen. And we're starting to get a positive response from especially also officers within the government around the advocacy that we are trying to do to make sure that we don't forget what those regional functions of regional councils are. So there is that, and we just wanted to make sure that we can continue that, because a voice of all of us together is quite powerful. And that's the message that I'm trying to say to everybody that I speak to, is that together we are a powerful force to go to the government to say we as regional councils across the country together are making a difference, and these are the things that we're setting out. And the National Council for LGNZ is respectful of that. They are willing to work with us on that, and really making sure that we're getting good value for money, good engagement, so that we don't forget about the real important pieces of this, which is our communities. I was going to talk a bit about the influence, which is really pivotal. One of the things that you'd notice, and Scott will talk about this, is we're repositioning National Council LGNZ as a peak body rather than just a broad advocacy body. This is about making sure that we get the best out of local government that we can, because local government is a powerful force if we do work together in those spaces. And it's also about giving us that lobbying clout. I noticed the previous speaker said, yeah, you can go alone and go and do these things individually. Ministers and the government have explicitly said to us that they want to talk to a group of councils as a group, get together, work together to make sure that you're coming to us with a clear ask. And this is what we're really tasking LGNZ. So we've really put the nail down for LGNZ, especially with Scott and the board, to make sure that that message is really good. So political engagement, advocacy, media engagement is really important as well. So making sure that we've got clear messaging so that when we're talking to the public about what we're also doing, we've got clear accountability, because accountability is also really important in this space as well. And I just wanted to finish up. Connections to the whole sector are really important. They're not boozy. They're not boozy events. They're actually targeted to getting together and making sure that we are talking the same language. We're making the same conversations, so that when we come back to our communities, that hold us to account, we can make sure that we're looking at New Zealand as a whole, not just in our little patches. And as somebody else said today before, the environment has changed, and that's what I was just talking about within the president, the vice president, new CE. It is quite different, and the simplification for local government environment has changed. And I've really valued working with you, Warren. And Warren, your chair does bring a very powerful voice for the Waikato into all these conversations that we're having within local government. And Warren can attest to those conversations as well, because they've been quite useful, and especially the advocacy for your communities in the Waikato. So thanks for the chance to just say a few words, and I'll pass over to Scott as well.
Thank you, Dion. So I just want to lean into the leadership reset and the strategy reset. So first of all, I'm very clear with the team. We do what members want. And so over the last last 3 or 4 months, we've been working with members right across the country. So you can feed in your priority principle, your priority advocacy priorities. And that has been voted at the All of Local Government event a couple of weeks ago. And we've also worked with the regional, rural, provincial and metro in terms of understanding what sits under those. We're currently setting up our advocacy reference groups, and so expressions of interest are open at the moment, and it's absolutely critical that every sector has a really strong voice in there, and particularly regional sector, given the simplifying local government policy reform that's underway at the moment.
So I'm going to stop you there, Scott. That is 5 minutes, and we'll come to questions. Gary Raymer.
Thanks for the presentation. I can't count the amount of times I've sat in this room here and heard people say, that we're unique, the Waikato is unique, and also that we want to paddle our own waka. How can you, as a national body, then represent our uniqueness better than what we can do it ourselves? And why should I give my award to somebody to paddle my waka when I want to do it myself?
Look, thank you for that question. So first and foremost, we don't want you to hand us the paddle completely. You should have your own independence, your own voice, and should obviously be working with all stakeholders and government directly. I guess where we come in is we can unify the sector in terms of overall policy thinking. So just a pure example that comes to mind is the Before Deluge work. So Te Hika developed a really concrete, really valuable business plan. We then activated our national networks, media, government relations, worked with officials in government agencies, CEs in big government agencies, the ministers' teams, and directly with ministers to then secure $200 million for flood protection. We're currently working to present to the National Caucus on flood management and flood protection investment going forward. So that's the work that we can do. We certainly don't want to take your individual voice or your uniqueness. That's not our role.
Thanks. I'll go to Chris. Sorry. Can you use the mic? Use the mic then.
I didn't hear an answer around our uniqueness. So we are unique, and how does a central body represent our uniqueness?
Is there a reply there?
You are unique, and we don't want to take away from that. What we want to do is support you and the wider sector, rural, provincial, metro and regional, to advocate for those things that are critically important to local government across New Zealand. We certainly don't want to take away from your uniqueness. That's not our role.
Aaron, just in respect to that, I just wouldn't mind saying, I often hear Canterbury is quite unique as well, in which we are quite unique in respect to our river systems, just like you've got a big river system. Every region has unique aspects to it. I don't think LGNZ or Te Kahika or any of the bodies that represent us are an either or. The value for the collective, what Scott was just talking about, is great, but then having the confidence of that, then also going and doing your own work, and I know, Warren, you do that quite capably, and the councils do that. So I don't think it's an and or. Yes, your region is unique. I've lived there. I grew up in Tokoroa, which was and Putaruru, which is where my grandparents are from, which is a great place to grow up. But yeah, I don't think it's an and or. I think you've got opportunities and scope to do all sorts of things that you want to do.
Thanks, Dion. Chris.
Thanks, Chair Warren. Dion, you made much to do about things that have changed. You've changed some people that are sitting on seats. Our chair circulated a paper, which I think was prepared by Scott, explaining the local government in New Zealand's about it. Didn't change anything as far as my understanding is concerned. But sadly missing from that, and please correct me if I'm wrong, was any changes in policies of local government New Zealand. My concern is the policy settings that you've got down there are not fit for purpose. They do not recognise the direction of travel of the government, and that's why I'm very opposed to local government New Zealand. So if you've changed your policies, please tell me what you've changed.
So just on that, you go, Dion.
No, Scott. Just from a governance point of view, we've only really got together over the last few months. That is something that is changing. But Scott, you'll probably have a lot more insight into that from the nuts and bolts.
Yeah, so just going to talk, I guess, about the mechanism to engage. So I said on my opening statements were very clear that we are here to support and serve members. And so the way we go about doing that is obviously you have representatives that sit on our board. So you have a zone representative and obviously a regional sector representatives. And then we get together as zones. So those forums where policy views can be shared and you can bring your perspective. We're also in that process of setting up our advocacy reference groups. And again, absolutely actively encourage you to, if you've got concern about our policy settings, we're open to expressions of interest at the moment. And that's the vehicle. So we will have a reference group per advocacy priority. And that is the decision making or the advisory group. And then obviously that then goes through to our board. You have 3 representatives on our board. So we identified late last year when the government announced the Simplifying Local Government that while we had 2 strong regional representatives in Benita Bigham and Riet Stoltz, who's also our president.
Scott, if I can stop you, I think Chris's question was what's changed? Yeah. Yeah. So I'm pretty confident the councillors understand the structure. So it's what's changed from the criticisms that we heard earlier and this council voted on last triennium to what's changed in the policy going forward and advocacy into government. I think
So I guess we're in that process of reforming based on the elections last year, and so that's why I wanted to talk to the mechanism. So there's opportunities there to influence the policy going forward. What I can say that has changed quite significantly in the recent months is our relationship with the government. So we've met recently with the Prime Minister. He was engaged. We spoke specifically about government reform and simplifying local government. We talked to him directly about the fact that we think there is value with regional councillors staying on to obviously govern regional councillors, why there is that reorganisation process and the criticality of actually having that regional voice involved in the CTPs to provide that insight so that effectively there are 3 governance roles that need to occur over that time. We've also then met with Minister Watts. So we had an hour and a half working lunch with Minister Watts. Again, we reiterated some of the issues with the regional sector and also advocated for public transport. This afternoon at midday today, we're actually meeting with Minister Watts again. We've had Minister Bishop. We've met with him several times. We've met with the opposition just in this last week. So the relationship with the government has changed significantly, and the tone and the approach, and they're now actually actively asking us to input into their policies and support them on various issues.
Thank you. Robbie. Microphone.
Oh, sorry. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was one of the ones that voted against it last term. And for the reason for that is your reporting back to us wasn't good enough. That when we only, in 3 years, I think we only had LGNZ in the building once to come and see us. And I'd like to see that if you, if anything going forward, you have to be in this building twice a year minimum and reporting back to us quarterly of how you're improving working on our behalf, and that needs to be reported to all councillors so we can actually, it's all right, Warren's down, gets to go to Wellington once in a while, but we don't get to see it. So, and we, as I said, we're in a changing environment, so we need to know if we're to support and stay with you, we need to know what you're giving in return and how that's presented to us as councillors, because otherwise, yeah, we're in the blind the whole way. And they're like, we are unique. We've got iwi, treaty settlements, we've got infrastructure, flood protection is most probably one of the biggest in the country, and through the reorganisation of central government, we're after a real help of where these flood protection assets and where they're going to be in years to come, because they're vital. They protect the GDP and the communities in the Waikato, and it is vital. Well, as you know, it's vital infrastructure, and yeah. Well, that's a long-winded question, but go for it.
Can I just, I'll pipe in there quickly, just in regards to the communication back. Warren did relay that into us in one of our last meetings. That is something that we will be discussing at our next regional sector meeting, which is in the middle of May, which is only a few weeks away really, and about how we can do that. So if there's anything specific that from your council that you want in regards to how we communicate back, or how Warren can communicate back to you as well, do keep that communication through the chair so that we can make sure that happens, because I'm really keen to make sure that everybody is on the same page. That is one of the things that I really want to see.
I think I just explained what we'd be after just then.
Yeah, no, I heard that. That's good.
And look, absolutely happy to make a commitment to come and speak to you at least, twice a year. I'm sure Dion would be happy to do that, as well as our president and vice president. So very happy to commit to doing that. But also just want to reiterate, we do produce a quarterly report. We have heard through a number of forums that that's not necessarily getting to all elected members. So we will be taking steps to make sure that that does. And I think just last week, we actually set up a process where I emailed, I think, all elected members, including the regional sector, rural, provincial and metro. So looking to do a lot more of that. So thank you for that point.
Oh,
Thank you. When I moved this notice of motion, this week I mentioned to my wife that I had done so and that my name might appear in the paper again once or twice. She said to me, "What does LGNZ do?" And I thought about it and I said, "Well, it's a bit like a union, really, acting for the councils." "Oh," she said. So hopefully she's not unhappy with me saying that. So coming back, when this came up 12, 18 months ago, we had the then chief executive come to us, told us what she was going to do and what the organisation was going to do, and then at the end of it told us she was leaving in a week, so didn't stick around to fulfil her promises. And okay, we've had there is 2 questions coming, Mr. Chair. So
the sooner the better. Thank you, Councillor.
So nothing has changed in my view, only what is proposed to change. We need to see results and we haven't. So I have brought this to a head by putting in this notice of motion. So what concerns me, and I'd like to understand why, so please explain. First question, as soon as the government announced its planned changes to local government, including particularly regional councils, LGNZ got in behind the CTB approach. Completely bonkers as far as I'm concerned. You've sided with the government, you haven't stepped back and said, what is best for the community? You've adopted something and got in behind a CTB, a bunch of mayors who know nothing about regional governance. Now, I'm pleased to hear that the rumours coming out, if they're true, the regional councils will stay in existence for 3 years to be part of. That's great, but I'd like to, the first question. The second question is Auckland in particular, Canterbury and others, Christchurch, sorry, and others, have left LGNZ. Auckland's got a minister that has direct representation to council, to government. So why have you got behind an ill-conceived plan, LCTBs, etc., and what has Auckland got, or what do they miss out on for not being an LGNZ? Thank you.
Thank you for that. So just look, firstly, as I said before, it is absolutely critical that regional councillors stay on to govern the organisation through that period of change. In my mind, there are 3 governance roles that need to occur. There's obviously the governance of the regional sector and the regional council, there's governance of the territorial authority, and then there is the CTB. We are not fully supportive of the government's proposal, so we've challenged them and pushed back quite strongly on regional councils staying on for the full term and being as part of that regional process. We do have a remit that was passed at our AGM that supported sector change, and it was passed at about 80%. So I guess that's our vehicle for members to make critical decisions. I do also want to acknowledge that there are people at the heart of this reform, and this is not the process that we would have necessarily undertaken. However, that was taken out of our hands when the government announced this reform. So we are now leaning into working with the government to identify and make sure we deliver the best possible reform that is possible for communities and ratepayers. Also want to recognise that people will potentially disagree with our policy settings in that space. But we've advocated very strongly to Watts, the Prime Minister, directly, and we've actually heard them repeat back to us that they are listening and they now understand the critical governance roles that need to occur over the next couple of years as reform takes place. We're also very much of the view that it's a regional conversation, and so ultimately it's up to that region to decide how they want to structure themselves going forward. It's actually not up to LGNZ to come up with a particular model. That is not our role. It's actually up to the communities. It's up to you guys as community leaders in partnership with your territorial authorities to actually decide what is fit for purpose for your area, and we're very strong about that.
NCTBs.
So we're supporting CTBs in terms of making sure that they've got the right capacity and the right capability to deliver the best possible outcomes for communities. We're not actually advocating for a particular outcome from that CTB or a particular model that they might want to look at. That's not our role. What we want to make sure, though, is that, so stepping back a little bit, so first of all, mayors didn't run on a campaign to run regional councils. A lot of mayors don't actually feel that they've got the mandate to do that. They've also recognised that they don't necessarily have the understanding of the functions that regional councils deliver. Also want to recognise that, you know, everybody in this room ran on a campaign, you celebrated your success, you set your lives up to then serve your communities on regional council. That was taken away from you fairly quickly, and we're entering a period of uncertainty, so I want to recognise that. But we also want to recognise that you have critical competencies and experience that are really valuable to delivering the functions that regional councils currently deliver. And obviously we've got a couple of unitary councils. It's really important that that competency and that understanding and that skill is actually on the CTB to deliver those better outcomes. I want to be very clear, we support the CTBs having the capacity and the capability, and that would be territorial authorities, representative, regional sector, but potentially even external expertise as well to make sure that it's set up to succeed. So I just want to be really clear about that. We don't have an end game.
Scott, okay, thank you. I'll get you to just quickly answer the Auckland question.
Sure.
Is there a benefit or a loss to them not being part of LGNZ? As you see it from your, obviously,
Obviously, Auckland and Christchurch sadly left, and we also lost a couple of other members. We are in current conversations with some of those other members about rejoining, and we actually have ongoing engagement, particularly with Auckland. So first of all, I think there's a financial loss. So first of all, we have we produce obviously submissions. Those submissions we've costed anywhere between 30,000 and 80,000 per submission. We've done 10 of those submissions just in the last 4 months, so that's a value of $300,000 to $800,000. So they miss out on those submissions, which means then they've got to fund their teams to do that. So there's a saving. So I'm very clear that we act in that space as a shared service. What they also miss out on is the collective spend. So part of the resource management, part of the government, simplifying government reform, we procured specialist advice that was valued about about 100,000, 90,000 to 100,000 just in the last couple of months. That's money that you didn't have to pay for. It's money that Auckland wouldn't have had to have paid for. So we believe that there is a financial saving, and Auckland, we believe, have missed out on that, as have Christchurch. I do just want to make the point, though, that we still work with Auckland, so they are a funding partner for a financing tool that we've been working on for a couple of years, and they are a critical funding partner. So we still do have some relationships with Auckland.
Thank you. So I do want to move this on, and I understand that councillors want to get their heads around, so they do their due diligence for our conversation later. So I have Tipper, and then I have Gary Maguire, and then we'll close it off. So I'll come to you, Tipper, online.
Kia ora, you're my third CEO and fourth suite of local LGNZ governors, so nei anō te mihi kia koutou. I've participated in Maruata since I started as a local government member. This is feedback, not a question. In the last 5 weeks, I've noted Māori members, including mayors across the country, having to defend ourselves against other councillors with regards to a low baseline information about Te Tiriti o Waitangi. I would like Te Maruata to front that better across the comms with all councils, because individually we're having to do far too much of the heavy lifting in terms of treaty conversations at all our councils. And I think that's more than what we're meant to do on behalf of local government. And I'd like local government to New Zealand to take that on board and give Maruata the support they need to ensure that council is a safe place for all peoples, but including Te Tiriti o Waitangi conversations. So that's my feedback, not a question. Nei anō te mihi kia koutou. Kia ora.
Thank you, Tipper. Gary.
I've not been a supporter of LGNZ in the past.
So I'm not interested in an opinion. A question, please, Gary.
But the question is, if we are to give you a time of, say, 6 months or 12 months, are you confident that you can come back front up to this forum and say that you have given the value that we would
expect if we are to put our faith in continuing conditionally on remaining with you?
So just for clarity, a membership is for 1 year, just so you have that clarity.
If in 6 months' time, if among us we raise the question of doubt, are you confident that you can turn up here and guarantee to give us? The money doesn't matter, I don't think. It's more the support for Warren, who is battling in Wellington for our key issues, our plan change ones, our Whangamarino wetlands, our farmers' issues, the other issues within our district. Are you confident that you can front up here and get a welcome reception? Otherwise, goodbye.
I think that's a yes or no pretty much question. Thanks, Scott.
Yeah.
Yes,
Absolutely confident, and also happy to make a commitment that I'd come back here in 6 months' time and face you. So happy to do that, but absolutely confident we can do that. We've got a very strong board. We have a very different relationship and a very productive relationship now with the government. We've got a regional sector meeting in a couple of weeks' time. We've got Minister Watts coming to that. We've got the opposition. We are leaning into now, obviously, the manifestos of all of the parties. So we want to raise the critical issues for the sector, and that includes the regional sector. And so, yes, absolutely confident, but also very happy to make a commitment to come back 6 months to the day.
Thank you. Ben, final question.
And I'd be quite happy to do that as well, Warren. And I'm quite keen, and as you know, we work quite well together. Just one thing that was a question that was asked before about what's changed or something along those lines, and accountability is something that I was going to say there. We as a board of local government, we're quite focused on the accountability piece, and I'd be quite happy to come in front of you guys and whenever you want to have an accountability conversation, but also to give that support to Warren as well, so that he can bring those voices of your region into the conversations that are going on in Wellington, because I'm having the same challenges with my communities also, and exactly those same things you're talking about, and taking those to Wellington to make sure that those flood protection, biodiversity, biosecurity, civil defence, for instance, as well. We're all facing challenges in those spaces, and we must make sure that our collective work that we do together is working, so that we can actually get on and make sure those regional functions aren't lost.
Thank you, Dion. Ben?
Yeah, just very briefly, just can you confirm that this is the most major reform of local government since 1989, it's really 40 years, and there's major changes? Secondly, that Auckland Council is a unitary and therefore is not required to go through any change process. Thirdly, that the cost of Auckland's reorganisation was approximately 160 million funded by government. And are you advocating for central government to fund any change that's happening now, whereas the current model is you get rid of regional councillors and the $900,000 is supposed to pay for the whole transformation?
So I think there were three questions there. So definitely to the last question, we are very much advocating to the government in terms of who's paying for this and how it's going to be paid for, particularly given we've got a rates capping environment. That's also one of their critical policies. So that is a major issue. And obviously also leaning into the fact that we're currently got a fuel crisis. So that then puts incredible pressure on councils right across the country and gives uncertainty to annual plans and long-term plans. So funding and financing was the number one priority that came out of our prioritisation with memberships. And we've been working on that now for a number of years in terms of 30 odd funding financing tools, and it's a constant advocacy process. So yes, absolutely, that's critical that we have those conversations with government and we push them hard on that space. The other two questions.
Stop. We know the answer to the first two, so thank you. So thank you very much, councillors, for your questions. It's good to see that you are fully engaged in this process, and we will be covering this item later on in the agenda when we actually reach that. So thank you, Scott, for your presentation, Dion online, and also once again, Brett, and we will close up the deputation section. Thank you very much. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chair.
Right, apologies, we have nil. Thank you, Dave. Confirmation of the agenda as we have it in front of us. If I could have a mover, thank you, Chris. A seconder, thank you, Gary. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. Are there any disclosures of interest for anyone on any items on the agenda today? I'll take that as a no, thank you. So the first piece we have is minutes for confirmation and the council minutes from the 26th of March 2026, and we're including the public excluded, of which the stuff was. Sorry, Tipper. Oh, happy to move.
Happy to
Okay.
move.
Yep, thank you. Happy to thank you. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. So we're going to receive these minutes in the block as they are on the screen in front of you. Just quickly run through them. So EPC on the 11th of March, Integrated Catchment Management on the 18th, Regional Transport Committee on the 9th, and also Regional Transport Committee Public Transport Subcommittee on the 9th, Risk and Assurance Committee on the 16th, CEDM on the 30th, Waikato Rapatu River Trust and Regional Council Co-Governance on the 8th, and also the Hauraki Gulf Forum meeting that was held on the 29th. There are some recommendations that come out of those minutes, which we will deal with secondly. So this is just to receive those minutes and receive them as a block. So thank you, Katarina. Thank you, Angela. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. So we move for the recommendations that come out of risk and insurance, and I'll just hand over to Chris Hughes just to speak to these. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, thanks, Chairman Warren. So the minutes of 16th March tabled. The recommendation of the Risk and Assurance Committee, the Council Chair Warren Maher signs the audit engagement audit proposal for the annual audit for the end of year ended 30 June 2026. This is a standard procedure. It sets the terms of the engagement and also the fee. I hope you negotiated the fee down, Mr. Chair, from what the recommendation was, but we delegate authority to the Chair to sign that letter. Third recommendation, Risk Insurance adopts the updated procedural delegations manual, and that once again is in the minutes. And the fourth item on the recommendation was the Risk and Assurance Committee adopts the updated protected disclosures, the whistleblower policy. Again, that policy was documented in the papers for the agenda. So I'd like to move that those recommendations be adopted by Council, Mr. Chair.
Happy to second, Councillor Hughes.
Thank you for that confirmation, Tipper. So we have Councillor Hughes has moved, Councillor Mahute has seconded. All those in favour?
Aye.
Opposed? So carried. Next one up is the Integrated Catchment Management Committee and the recommendation. Robbie, I'll come to you to speak to that. You will need your microphone.
Chair, this was that if we're getting a legal opinion, that we actually see what the request was for the legal opinion and what the lawyers were being asked. So we have both the question and the answer, I suppose. Does that make sense? And instructing, yeah.
Yep. Okay.
I'm happy to move it.
Okay, thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Noel. Chris Hughes.
Sorry.
You were the one requesting it.
Okay. I also have Angela to a question on this.
Yeah, just is this standard practice across all committees?
That's what we're
That's
asking.
what they're asking for.
Yeah, it's a recommendation to council.
Okay.
So my impression is I was in that meeting, and it's for transparency behind it. So if we're requesting a legal opinion, there's an understanding of the letter of request.
Yeah.
And the structure behind what was actually asked for, so that you have complete transparency on the questions that were asked for the legal opinion.
So what's in scope, what's out of scope?
Yeah,
but the
correct.
actual legal advice itself would.
Yep.
Through Mr. Chair, if I could just clarify my understanding that this is only for matters which are on committee agenda items where legal advice has been given to enable a decision to be made.
Yes.
So.
Thank you.
Hang on, I've got a speaking order. Keith.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. So I'm just a little bit confused now. Angela made a point and then you, Chris, made a point. So does this apply to all legal opinions, to all, for any part of the Waikato Regional Council activities that we get a copy of the questions asked, or only to the committee, as in this case of ICM?
Mr. Chair, as the seconder, the intent here is that where a committee or the council, us, ask for a legal opinion on something, then that letter of instruction that goes to the lawyer is included, so we know what the questions were asked and then the response, because often in the ICM example, we were challenged on what the hell was the question that was asked to give this response. Well, we didn't have that, so we couldn't. So, and just to go a little bit further on this latest one with this, staff and myself and Robbie worked with Greg Ryan on the questions, and then those questions were sent to Chris for sign-off, so that there was a process that we didn't get to the end and say we asked the wrong question. We all in agreement. But, and I'm not saying that should happen on every occasion, but this is only for questions from a committee or the council. The ones that Chris or his team ask in their operational, that's not for us. There's a clear distinction. That's what we ask for, what's the letter of instruction, and what is the response.
And Mr. Chair, that's consistent with my understanding of what was requested through the committee.
Clarification, if I can.
Yes, go ahead, Tipa.
The delegation, all legal advice is still sought through the CE, however, it's just how we disclose that to councillors or the information provided. Is that what this clarifies? Because I'd hate to think that we can all through our committees seek legal opinions everywhere.
No.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Robbie, did you have another comment? No. No other. Okay. No other comments or questions? Oh, sorry, Chris.
I'd just like to comment on that. And I just endorse the action that's been taken, because I had a great frustration over the last couple of years that we're being, legal opinions are being tabled and we don't know the questions that have been asked. And it's critical if you have to have an engagement letter with all the professionals. It's a standard procedure, and I think that should be provided for council. So I'm very pleased that's been covered. The other issue is that when I was told the quantum of that fee, I was astounded, what should be a relatively simple process. So what I'm going to be doing in our procurement review is tabling a letter which will go, I'm going to be asking the Chief Executive to send to all the lawyers who provide services in the region. If they want to be a service provider, then they'll comply with the terms and conditions of that letter, so we get some competitive pricing on our legal work rather than just going to one service provider. So I'm just signalling now that will be on the table for procurement. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Keith, you had a follow-up?
Yes, I'm just uncomfortable that it's not all legal opinions. I think this is still leaves a great big hole there for an interpretation of the legal opinion that's given to us without knowing the questions.
Okay, we have a motion on the table. We have a mover and a seconder. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. So the next one up is the CEDAM and the recommendation coming back through that. That's on page 67. Councillor Maguire, did you want to speak to this? I think it's around key performance indicators. It's fairly self-explanatory. You don't need to comment. It's there in front of us.
Move it.
Happy to second if the member would move it.
The members moved it and Councillor Smith has seconded. Thank you, Tipa. All those in favour? Opposed?
Total call.
Thank you. Carried. Right, our next item up is 7.2, which is our health and safety report on page 104 of your agenda. And we welcome Stu Brown to the table.
Good morning, councillors. I'll take the report as read and take you through some points of interest. You'll see that this report focuses on good governance this time round, and we continue to provide you with these reports to enable you to do your duties there. You'll see that the recent events through the courts for Peter Gray Engineering, they were fined a pretty significant amount of money for the sad fatality of a worker that was crushed. And you'll see later on why that's important to us. I've got some pictures to show you of some work that we do in that space that could have that consequence if we weren't operating as safely as we possibly could. As we work down through, you'll see that the Council's Health and Safety and Wellbeing Governance Plan has been updated, and that's really to strengthen again that governance assurance. And you'll see that the bullet points there around your obligations to learn and develop, anticipate and understand, plan and resource, trust and verify, and monitor and respond have been called out. Those of you who were with us in the last triennium may remember Tompkins Wake came and ran an interactive session just around good governance and what that looked like to be able to support you. I have reached out to another lawyer in town to come and run another one of those interactive sessions. I think now would be a good time to do that, and I'm keen to set that up for you at a time that's convenient, just to go through that. As we progress through, you'll see the events. We've called out this month that we've seen higher than usual vehicle event reporting. And the good thing about the event reporting is that it allows us to look and see trends and things that are going on. And this is one that's been highlighted just because of the number there that have come up. And you'll see that thankfully they've been fully investigated, and the staff have been making good decisions and having good situational awareness to things that have been happening, and they're all fairly minor, and we have no corrective actions that are significant in that space. But it's good to see that the reporting continues and to allow us to be able to have that focus. We move through to section 3, and I just wanted to take a moment to reflect on this. As I read the report in preparation for today, I guess my personal view is that we have seen significant advances in the last couple of years here. We've moved into a position of having a number of lead indicators. When I joined the organisation, we were mainly looking at lag indicators. So I really just wanted to call out Marie and the team for their support, that they've been able to continue to evolve this paper to get better and better. And Chris's ongoing support of that has been greatly appreciated. So it's really great to see that. In the last council meeting, we talked about the executive walkarounds and that it would be great to see some examples of those from the year, and we've picked one out for you. Dave, I'm not sure if the pictures will work, but we've got a couple of pictures from a recent executive health and safety walkaround that Greg Ryan took part in, which was the Mangatafahi Compartment 3. Relates really back to that Peter Gray Engineering crush. The potential here, we've obviously got a high risk site with cranes and pretty heavy lifts going on, and you'll see the observations that Greg undertook as he went through that with our staff and the contractors. And it was great to see that all of the resources were in place and that the overlapping duties were clear, and everything on site was being managed as we would like to see. Another thing to note here is that the plan for this work was obviously done ahead of time, and when the contractor and our staff got out to site, they obviously are in a dynamic environment, and they had planned to have one cofferdam, but on further review they decided that they required a further cofferdam. So that's just another example of, I talk often about the dynamic risks, and we need to be across those. So it's great to see that that's working really well. And finally, just moving through to the health and safety management system assurance, it's great that the team have been able to undertake 44 reviews of the events that's been happening, and continue to further develop our management around the assessment of those, and the continued improvement of our investigations is great to see, along with a lot of our targets being on track or ahead of schedule. Happy to take any questions.
Keith. Yeah, thanks, Warren. Stu, I'm just struggling to understand why we're involved with Peter Gray Engineering. Do we own the company, or?
Yeah, no, really, really good point. So these, you'll see at the start of all of the health and safety reports, we have a national event that's called out. And when I talked earlier about, your obligations under the Health and Safety at Work Act, being those, learn and develop, anticipate and understand, plan and resource, trust and verify, and monitor and respond. These reports are set up to help you do those things. And the national events that we call out in the reports are part of that. That's part of your ongoing development and understanding of what's actually happening out there and the consequences of things when they do go wrong. So I guess you'll see there's a national event called out in every paper that I present, and that's the reason for that.
So through you, Mr. Chair, this has nothing to do with our health and safety. It's an example of what happens.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Totally understand.
Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Yep. Thanks, Keith. It has been a really valuable expose, if you like, of various things that have happened around the country. One that springs to mind is the Ports of Auckland and the fact that they took the CE to court over the unfortunate gentleman that was crushed and that sort of thing. So it just keeps in front of mind potentially the risks for this organisation and as various events occur. And so I think it's a valuable piece that Stu reports on each time. But as you say, no relevance to our council in the actual event, but the learnings from it are certainly very, very valuable. Noel.
And just further to that, if you look at paragraph 12, we've just talked about the illegal opinion being sought in relation to ICM activities, and particularly farmers undertaking spraying drains with their own equipment on their own day and time. But what it says, talking here about relying on informal practice or experience and reinforce the need for deliberate planning and controls for higher risk activities. But that cascades down. So the learnings from case law, which this is, can be transposed into regional council setting. So as Warren has said, this is a really valuable piece at the start of what's happening nationally, what the courts are determining, and that becomes our guidelines. So, this might, Greg, might be worthwhile bringing up with Tompkins Wake as part of the review. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. Tipper?
Kia ora and thank you for the report. Probably just a couple of follow-up questions from previous reports and this one. And thank you. I see that I track where the organisation is improving its practice. I want to ensure that we're improving our governance. So I'm wondering if you could propose some likely scenarios that we would deal with as the PCBU for this organisation in terms of catchment, because it's one that we worry about or ones that we have that would be useful for us to govern so that we know we have the systems there. That's one. Two, given that the feedback from the last couple of meetings was to build resilience in our staff across those events that we do manage as regional council, our PCBU responsibility is to train as many people as possible. Where do we track and assure ourselves that we're doing that in response to the recommendations from health and safety? Kia ora. Two big questions, I know, but whatever you can answer, otherwise I expect Chris will be able to. Thank you.
Yeah. No, great questions. Thank you. I think the catchment system could be a good piece to pick up with that interactive session with you to kind of delve into that a bit more deeply. So I've made a note of that and I'll have that included in that session that we'll aim to run with you over the next month or so. Regards to no problem. In regards to building resilience and having trained staff available, we report on that monthly through the executive reporting, and I'm pleased to report back that continues. We look at the entry level and intermediate level, and then the ability for people to actually run events. And we have a training regime underway over the next 12 months to get us up to where we need to be with that. I'm not 100% sure on the figures, but the last time, probably 2 or 3 weeks ago, we had an additional 15 people signed up to be able to respond so that we can start to spread that load when those events occur.
Could I just note that maybe in your September, October report, we report on that so that we're well ahead of next season's weather events in
Yep,
terms of
absolutely
where our
happy.
preparedness is. Thank you.
Happy to include it. Thank you.
Thank you, Tipper. If there are no other questions for Stu, we have a motion to receive the report. Thank you, Noel. Thank you, Katarina. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. We did have morning tea down for about now, but I think we'll move into the energy strategy item next before we break, seeing as there are a number of staff have raced into the room to join us. So it is on page 113 of your agenda, and Tracy's going to introduce us. So you will be aware that this was a piece that we covered in the workshop, and there were about 8 items, I believe, that we wanted additions, alterations included in it, which I note are in our pack.
Just quickly on that last item, if you heard the news, the weather forecast for the winter and summer, we're in for a dry period, so maybe our staff can get some well-deserved rest.
Unlike our farmers. Yeah, thank you. Tracy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Morning, councillors. So as the Chair noted, we have had a workshop on this, and Michelle and Blair have taken on board your comments both at the workshop and the additional comments that some councillors have shared with us through email. So I do just want to note that we started this process probably about 3 years ago, where we developed our energy inventory, and at the time we kind of said, why an inventory, why not a strategy? The energy inventory put us in a really good foundational space for the team then to develop the energy strategy. I don't know if, like me, ever since the workshop, there seems to be about 3 or 4 articles in the paper about energy and different forms of energy, and crikey, we need an energy strategy, and what do you do in government? And obviously there is an issue that's causing the acute attention, but yeah, it's really good, it's really prescient, it's timely, and it is the start of, I guess, a more structured approach to how we can lead a positive energy future for our region. I'll pass over to Blair or Michelle, who is just going to take us. Michelle, looks like you've got the piece of paper just to give you the comfort that you need in terms in terms of, we heard you at the workshop and we've made the changes, particularly in regard to nuclear.
Thank you, Tracy. Good morning, Chair and councillors. So yeah, as Tracy said, that we presented to you at a workshop on the 9th of April. You provided us with some valuable feedback. We've taken that on board. We've made some amendments to the strategy, which you can see in track changes in the agenda. So the key changes that we've included are adding a section in the scope to explain why nuclear fission and new fossil energy sources are excluded, clarifying why we need an energy strategy. We've added 3 graphs to show changes in demand for different fuel types over time. We've sharpened the vision. We've identified that the Regional Energy Forum is the key action for the strategy, and this is separate from the recommendations. We've made it clear that the recommendations are for a Regional Energy Forum to consider and implement. We've made the implementation section clearer, and we've added a number of recommendations. These recommendations have gone into the technical support document, which is the larger, more detailed version of the strategy. So the next steps are to finalise the strategy following this meeting, subject to any further amendments you may have. And then we will share the final strategy with the stakeholders who provided input and work with them on setting up the Regional Energy Forum. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The questions, Angela?
Not really a question. Yeah, just to say a big thank you to the team. Great work over the years, and I think it shows really great regional leadership from our council, and very timely leadership as well. Pleased with all the changes, and the workshop was really productive and gave us a really good lay of the land of where we're at in the Waikato, and you know, where we can lead the way nationally. So thank you to each one of you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Noel.
in a 101, why have we said no to nuclear power?
The description's there, but
I'm trying to find it. 26. I've gone past it again.
I'll read it to you. A lack of social license, high cost, slow to build, unresolved waste management challenges, and the need for large volumes of cooling water, typically requiring coastal siting. Bear in mind Fukushima.
That bollocks. I won't. All right, I'll just vote against it. I think you cannot exclude nuclear.
Tracy, so coming to Noel's and potentially Chris's point around nuclear, is there an on-ramp within this strategy to look at that further down the track? So obviously we're heading for an energy forum, and in that piece, so I raise the question: is there an on-ramp for any other potential energy source that may be?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I was just checking with Blair the page number, which is page 126 of your agenda. Now, nowhere there does it say it's excluded, but it doesn't say it's in. It says it's not included. I think importantly, and one of the comments I was going to make at the end is this strategy is a living document. Energy itself is so dynamic. We know that it changes weekly, monthly at the moment, and we've had, I think from memory, about 3 workshops, including the workshop we had last month on this and the 2 workshops in the energy inventory where the matter has been canvassed, and there presently isn't the framework with the depth required nationally. We know there has been some activity, as Councillor Hughes has reiterated each time we've had the conversation, but at the moment it presents itself as too expensive and too environmentally risky. Councillor Smith may say that's bollocks. I appreciate that's a point of view, but all evidence that we've had to inform the strategy, that's the position that staff have taken and have included in the strategy. As you say, it will be reviewed.
So perhaps that wording could say is currently excluded, which may open that door.
So it's unsuitable at this time.
At this time.
So
yes.
I think that's noted. Can I get Noel for a reply? Mike, I do have a speaking order. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair, because it says on the first line, however, it's not included, blah, blah. Yeah, if we can go to that comment, that whilst excluded currently, should opportunities arise and all things being equal, it may be reconsidered.
Yeah.
Something like that, please. And I'd be happy then to support.
Okay, thank you. Keith.
Yeah, thanks.
Microphone, Keith.
Yeah, thanks, Warren. Thanks for this report. I thoroughly enjoy it, but I'm very, very concerned about some of the components that are really missing, and it comes back to Chris and Noel's comments about nuclear. One of the things that I think we miss is we've got a huge energy infrastructure in our area, but there's no real gain out of it other than employment. And so the price of energy is far too high, and we're governed by, okay, might be macro economics and political, but the cost of energy is too high. So the only way that a business can reduce its energy costs is to take energy production or that on board and do it themselves. Now, in there, we talk about use of biofuels and that sort of thing, and I've just checked with my member of Fonterra here next door to me, and it says that wood chips is much more expensive than other forms of energy to drive the dairy factories. Now, we need cheap energy in our area to drive businesses, and we're already feeling the pinch of fossil fuels, which there's a drive to electrify things, and some of the costs of our alternatives in terms and under the word of resilience is far, far too expensive. So what I would like to see in here, and I'm looking at your thing there, the middle one there, it's got, I'll read it out. Can we all afford it? And the question is, no, we can't, and we can do better, and that's something that should be part of our focus.
So I'll just bring the councillor's attention to 1.2, which you raised in the workshop and has been included, that we are looking for affordable, secure and cleaner. So that affordable is picked up in this document, and it was an addition, it's in blue.
Yep.
And so I would suggest that does speak to your concerns.
Yeah, okay, I'll accept it, but I'm not happy.
1 out of 2 is not bad. I'll take 1 out of 2. Ben.
Yeah, I'd just like to thank the team for the work they've done. Last time we did an energy strategy, 2007, oil prices went from $70 to $147 within a year, which triggered a global recession. There's a prescience in rewriting the new strategy. I wonder if Blair's got some stock tips at the same time or something. I think it's really important, particularly also we've just announced the Maui gas field is shutting down. So the whole of the energy sector is this. I think this is important because A, it will help us lead central government because very few people are this far ahead, we're 10%. But most important for Keith is that it's going out to a regional energy forum. So the actual practical getting stuff done is going to be done by the players. It's not just a theory. So it's going to roll out. So I'm happy to move if anyone wants. Yep.
Thank you. Gary Maguire.
In this energy crisis time, my thought would be that you've got to keep the door open for everything, and whether it's developments in nuclear fusion over in France, it's being done at the moment now, is for us to keep an open mind rather than saying what we have at the moment appears to be too expensive. Well, that may not be because of new technology that's coming through. So I would be wanting to keep an open mind and keep it open so that all options are on the table.
And I think that's what Tracy articulated, but as a living document, Tracy.
Yeah, I think it's important, those words at the end of the sentence, at this time, because I think it is exactly as you've said, Councillor, the options need to be identified and kept open, not necessarily. Timing's everything. It's not the best time at the moment to pursue that, but that may change. So that's why at the top of page, I'm going to say 127, yes, we've put at this time, and we'll include those additional words as you've noted. Michelle's got them down here.
Thank you.
Michelle, the words that Michelle's captured here have said, should opportunities arise, it may be reconsidered, which were the words that the chair said.
Thank you. Chris Hughes.
Thanks, Warren. Look, and thank you, Tracy, for getting that in there. And I'll tell you why it's important, because before Christmas, I spoke to the Prime Minister in a public forum about nuclear energy, and he was quite adamant then that there wasn't a political will for it to be discussed publicly. Words to that effect. I think Keith was sitting next to me at the time, so he can remember the words he used. But last week, when I spoke to him again, he said, thank you for raising it. He said, I'd like somebody to start putting it on the agenda so that it can then be exposed to the public forum and we can have that discussion. He said he thinks we're moving into that space given the pressure on energy supply and costs. He said it's time that the discussion was opened up. So I'm very thankful that it's included in there. And if this is going into a discussion forum, then I'm hopeful the reporting from that will reach the Prime Minister's desk because it will have some action.
Thanks, Chris. Tipper online.
Yeah, I wish I could be as optimistic as Councillor Hughes about that, but I'm open to alternatives, whether it's nuclear, hydrogen, fusion. I don't really care, but I can't put something on the plate that is currently nationally not approved. So until there's a nuclear centre of something, Councillor, I think we're backing up the wrong tree, but here we go. I support the strategy, so I'd like to move this. Mine to you, Tracy, is I don't think we upframe the fact that we provide a third of the nation's current energy by hydro. That this is one of our major exportable products, is the energy that the region. So that's our vested interest. It's not written that way, and I just wondered, was that a particular frame that we took, or
Can I get Tracy a microphone? Guys, turn off your mics.
or did we not want to upframe that to this is why we're interested, that we want to be a self-sufficient region in terms of our energy contribution and utilisation? It reads like that overall, but it's not a strong statement. So I just wondered, what are we trying to say? Otherwise, it's a strategy that just notes this is everything we have here, and we have no particular goal except to manage what we have really well. I'm not sure, Tracy, just asking for guidance.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Thanks, Councillor Mahuta. We have got some of those words, and there was some frantic page flipping for me to put it in front of me here in the executive summary in terms of recognising just the quantum and the energy richness of the region. I hear what you're saying, and that it may have got lost in all the other messaging, energy messaging in the document. And my first thought that sprung to mind is there's a real opportunity with the upcoming regional spatial plan to really lean into some of that energy provision and actually capitalise on it. At the start of the meeting, we talked about the region's uniqueness. And I think for me, what this energy strategy does is it puts down on paper our energy uniqueness and our energy importance for the country. What we haven't got in front of you is Michelle and Blair have been working on the collateral, particularly a one-pager, and I think that is really where we can tease out some of those messages. We generated a one-pager 18 months ago and then refreshed it last year because we used it with them, Minister Watts. I think there's a real opportunity to reiterate some of those messages that you talked about, Councillor Mahuta, and sorry, Chief Executive would like to make a comment as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, look, I think it's a valuable comment in our strategic direction that you signed off. In the infographics in there, it does highlight those sort of things, and it should filter down through the strategy and into the other collateral that we have that going out with this as this goes out. I think it's a really valuable point.
Gary Raymer.
Thank you. Look, I enjoyed the report as well. I thought it was a good read, but strikes me it's full of contradictions as well, about what we do. You talk about sustainable, and you also talk about price affordability, and I struggle where that is. I suppose my question would be, should we not emphasise, rather than trying to focus on plans and recommendations, we'll look at that. But, I have great faith in technology and the development of technology and where they'll go. And I think, science and technology will actually lead us out of an energy crisis quicker than what we'll do it ourselves. And so things are evolving quickly, and whether it be nuclear or fusion or not, and I'm not sure that it will be, but I think it'll be something far greater than that. And we don't know what we don't know. So are we reflecting on that enough, where the technology will go in our energy strategy? And just to that, I think, Keith and I have listened to Guy Muir speak a few times, and, I find him inspirational and where his thinking is around future technology and energy and stuff like that. And, I think there's a danger we don't know what we don't know.
If I may, Councillor, just to respond to that, what we were clearly at pains to do with the inventory and also the modelling, was to ensure that we modelled technology that was available now, that could be bought off the shelf, if you like, or adapted to our situation. So it is not relying on figurative, unicorns, where something is always 30 years down the track. So that's why we have modelled what we have. And in relation to your comments about contradiction, that's probably what we're trying to get across in page 126 when we talk about the energy trilemma, to make sure that we actually bring all those things together and at the same time and weave them into the strategy. And that's figuratively what we've tried to do there. Whereas in contrast, the modelling that Concept Consulting did for us focused on just a couple of those threads and found that the economic benefit long-term to the region was not as good as if we were progressing all three together. So I hope that responds to your inquiry.
Tracy?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I've just talked to Michelle. We do make reference to technological progress under setting the scene, particularly as Blair just said, talking about the trilemma. Perhaps what we could do is actually tease out a paragraph that has as its header technology, and exactly what you're talking about there, Councillor Raymer. We don't know what we don't know yet. We are modelling based on existing technologies because that's what we know. However, as more technology, more people come into this space, I think it's worth saying we need to be open to what that is. So the team will insert another paragraph in there capturing exactly that need to make sure we're keeping ahead of, if not a little bit in front of, technology and science.
So thank you for that, because I do acknowledge also within your paper, and I noted that point 29 is under climate leadership, admittedly, but it also relates into energy. You know, you admit that you have few levers that you can pull, you know, and that's a fact.
Jennifer?
Oh, thank you, Chair. Just want to wholeheartedly second Councillor Angela, Ben and Tifa's comments, and just great work, team, for great evidence-based strategy. And I hope the next government, no matter what composition it's made up of, is inspired by it, and it's New Zealand, a national one as well. And just on Tipa's point, yeah, it'd be great to highlight that aspect of us being a third of the country in the press release. No, Wendy? Yeah. I think that's a fact that I think not many people realise makes this really relevant. Thank you. Well done.
Mikhail?
Yeah, again, endorse what Jennifer's just said, and also Tipper. You know, even though in other sectors the energy places are closing down, I think the Waikato region, I just look at down in our region, you know, a new solar energy farm, 700,000 panels. You know, it's going to be the largest solar farm in New Zealand, and then 2 new binaries that are getting built in Te Mihi with Contact Energy, with room for another 2 binaries. So, you know, I think we do need to highlight that we are huge in the energy sector, and the strategy is to endorse that as well. So, yeah, thank you.
Thanks, Mikhail. Now, noting Keith and Ben, you've both spoken before, and we have workshopped this topic. Is there something different?
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
So I'm just concerned in terms of the electrification of the railway. I totally understand it, but I think we need to, in terms of the political side of this, is that we need better infrastructure. So we need a better railways, we need better rolling stock to make it efficient. Otherwise, we're just pushing shit uphill. We might electrify it, but we're still going to move the same amount of stock. So I think we need to focus or get some political nous into getting the better connections, particularly as the population grows, and particularly that Auckland to Hamilton thing. We still don't. I think Chris McLeod pointed out the other day to me that we just don't have passing lanes. So these things need to be sorted out earlier than later.
And I think this strategy is something that leads to identifying those roadblocks and where those sorts of things land. Ben, same comment?
Very briefly. So in relation to you, Gary, talking about future technology, I was just going to point out that this is a living document and it actually operationalizes itself through the forum. And perhaps, Bear, you can comment about the forum, because the last time we run one of these, all of the energy generators are there with their new ideas as they come forward. So perhaps you can talk about how the forum will operate and why this makes it ongoing and up to date.
Thank you for that opportunity, Councillor. One of the things we certainly owe to those people who gave their time and their input and their data to the inventory and also the technical support document is to feedback. and show them what we've actually made of that and what your decisions have been. So we understand that'll be the first step, and that will take us perhaps to the end of this financial year. One of the things that we certainly picked up from those meetings with energy related parties is they recognise the interconnectedness with our economy and with our use of natural resources and our communities, and they certainly saw the value in a forum. So one of the things we'll be asking is, how do they see a forum working as well? So I think it would be a bit previous of me to respond to you, my thoughts, without firstly bringing those back from our stakeholders.
Thanks for that, Blair. Who was over the test case? Who's got the info on the test case? Which is the panels on top of the buildings, et cetera, which is at the end of the item. All I want is a name, because I'm going to take it offline, because I've got some questions around that don't need to be answered in this forum, but I'm just looking for who I need to talk to.
So it came from a staff member here. So pass on the questions and we'll get those answered for you.
Awesome. Right, we have a mover and a seconder in Ben Dummer-Smith and Councillor Mahuta. All those in favour? Opposed? So carried. And once again, also, obviously from all of the council, thank you very much for the work that's gone in. We are not only region leading, but obviously country leading in this space. So it'd be excellent to make sure that the comms capture just how far we've come and what we've done and that leadership role that we've taken on. Right, we will break for 15 minutes. So let's call it 1:15. So you've actually got 18 minutes. Thank you. We'll adjourn for 18 minutes and be back. Councillor staff, we are back in our meeting. Thank you. Dave, you are back recording. Excellent. So our next item up is 7.4, and it's the Waikato Regional Council submission to the proposed private plan change 37 to the Waipa District Plan. This is on page 168 of your agenda. Tracy, you are giving us a rundown on this.
Thank you, Chair. Look, I just want to say a few things before I hand over to Katrina and Lizette. The reason why this is coming to you, and this is for our new councillors, this is a matter, it's a private plan change and we make submissions on all private plan changes. It's a matter that would have gone through Stratton policy, or it would have gone to our submissions subcommittee. Now, just we couldn't quite get the planets to align, so we took the next opportunity to get it in front of yourselves, which is today. Otherwise, it would have been signed off under delegated authority. We are always hesitant to sign things off under delegated authority anyway, but specifically when it is a policy matter, such as a private plan change. This is significant. It's a significant deviation from good work, significant in part, not in whole, but in part from a lot of forward planning, a lot of strategic planning, particularly around infrastructure, particularly around water, particularly around planned and coherent development, whilst at the same time protecting soils and the productive capacity of soils, and yes, bats. No apology for that. We've worked probably 2 decades with Hamilton City, Waikato District Council, Waipa District Council, and ourselves in terms of ensuring that our network, our habitat network for bats is protected through all developers and developments, and we've had some really great wins. And we're not asking for anything more or less in this proposal than we've asked of other developers around within and around the Hamilton periphery. So I'll pass over to Katrina for the details. Katrina was successful in asking Waipa District Council for an extension of time so he could bring it to this table. And I'll pass over to Katrina.
Thank you, Tracy. And Katrina, if I could just get you to touch on, and you probably are, why this plan change doesn't, why the plan stop legislation doesn't apply to this, just for council's clarity. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Morena Koutou. I'll start with that point then up front. So central government's plan stop requirement applies to council initiated plan changes with some specific exceptions, for example, natural hazards, but all private plan changes are able to continue as normal under the RMA at the moment.
Thank you.
So I'll just give a quick run through of the proposed plan change and the draft submission, and then we'll be happy to answer any questions at the end. So plan change 37 is a request by Milan Park Stud to change the Waipa District Plan. It proposes to rezone approximately 98.6 hectares of land in Leamington to medium density residential zone. Page 169 of your agenda has a map showing the location of the plan change site within Cambridge. So you'll see from the map that part of the site, about 46 hectares, is within an identified growth cell and is currently zone deferred residential. This growth cell is identified for urban development post 2035 in the Waipa District Plan. So the plan change is proposing to bring forward the timing of development of this area, but it is an area that is anticipated to be developed longer into the future. But the other approximately 53 hectares of the site, which is the northern portion heading towards the Waikato River, is zoned rural and it's not identified for urban development in any strategic planning documents. So as you can see from the map, and as Tracy mentioned, the size of the plan change area is quite significant within the context of Cambridge. So the draft submission is focused on ensuring a strategic and coordinated approach is taken to the zoning of land for urban development, and that the proposal is supported by sufficient information and evidence as is required by the Waikato Regional Policy Statement. So the draft submission identifies that PC37 does not currently provide sufficient evidence to demonstrate that the proposed rezoning of the northern portion of the site, meets the relevant tests under the National Policy Statement for Highly Productive Land, or tests within our Regional Policy Statement for out of sequence and unanticipated developments. So really the submission is focused on ensuring that this necessary information and evidence is provided. The other key area, as Tracy mentioned, is in relation to ecological effects, particularly effects on long-tailed bats and their habitat. Again, the draft submission recommends areas of further assessment and additional provisions to ensure that effects on bats are appropriately addressed, both in accordance with statutory requirements and also consistent with the work that has occurred on other recent plan changes around Hamilton and Waipa in recent years. Finally, you'll see the draft submission has some short comments on managing natural hazards and acid sulfate soils towards the end. And that concludes my summary. Through you, Mr. Chair, we're happy to take any questions.
Thank you for that. Any questions for the team? Thank you, Noel.
I spent a lot of time in Cambridge, and my son-in-law grew up in Cambridge, and he said to me quite recently, he said, I don't like going to Cambridge anymore, into the town, because it's too busy, it's worse than Auckland. And so that brings up the bridge and so on that they want to build across the river. I see this extension compounding the issue. So it's right that all the issues that you talk about and the growth, but Cambridge is a desirable community. It's expanding, exploding, perhaps, as I've described it over the years. Growth is inevitable. It's right that these questions should be asked, but I don't think we should be opposing it if it's right. So I support what Waipa's trying to do here, but the bridge access across the Victoria Bridge or going down to the low-level bridge, both are bad, but the high-level bridge is just diabolical. So that size area on the Leamington side, there's got to be, perhaps ask them to build the third bridge. But, I digress and perhaps a little flippant, but growth is inevitable. We should support it, but it must be right. Thank you.
Tracy.
Yeah, I think what Katrina has outlined, Mr. Chair, is there is the deferred residential zoning component, which is a component that has been tested well and has been provided for, is acknowledged in bringing it forward. There may be some infrastructure challenges, but it is part of the longer term sequencing of growth, the, I guess, planned explosion, if we can call it that. The additional rural area has not been tested. There are infrastructural challenges. Water supply is one that pops to mind. So what we've indicated support in some areas, opposition in part, and the request for further information in other areas. And I think that's really the key tenet of the submission, is further information is needed to justify the extent of the expansion.
Will that include the likes of the development contributions and the contribution to the transport issues that will arise?
So through you, Mr. Chair, obviously we can't have a point of view about development contributions. What we have signalled in the submission is the need to sort the infrastructure and the sequencing and making sure there isn't misalignment.
Yeah. Thank you, Tracy. Gary Rama.
So Noel's spot on about the infrastructure, and as you've identified, Tracy, I agree with that. I have a concern, I suppose, around it. We're losing 1,000 hectares of agricultural land, dairy land, predominantly around Cambridge area. That's already targeted. It's a huge amount of land, and you could actually question why another 98 hectares is actually required at this stage. So there's a real issue around why we need that extra 98 hectares on top of the other 902 already targeted. So there's a question around that. And then the other question, which I didn't see addressed, is around greenhouse gases, where dairy land, you're taking land that's producing on average 11.7 tonnes a hectare of greenhouse gas emissions, and we're going to go to urban, which produces over 21.5 tonnes of greenhouse gases emissions. And And if we focus on those emissions, you know, why are we actually, or how are they going to mitigate that, and how does that fit in?
Tracy.
You, Mr. Chair, I'm a little bit dumbfounded that we're asking to put something in for cognizance of greenhouse gas emissions into a submission. I'm there. Sorry, there's a lot of smiling faces in the room at the moment. No, I think it does speak to the suitability of the land for the purpose. And I think that it's really important that highly productive land we know is going to be a challenge. We also know that 40% of New Zealand's population is going to be in the top half of the North Island in the next 10 to 20 years. So it's that real conundrum. I think Councillor Holmes mentioned there are a couple of paradoxes and contradictions in the energy strategy. Similarly here, we know we need to have good planned development, but that development can't potentially eat up all that productive land. I think we've covered it in the submission. We can have a look, but I think the comments that Katrina and the team have popped in the submission around suitability of land use will potentially leave it in there. Katrina, did you have a?
No, I don't have much further to add. I think Tracy's captured that correctly. I agree that I think we have quite sort of high level comments around the sequencing, the suitability in terms of addressing the highly productive land in particular, and the RPS requirements. So I think that sort of comes into that generally, but it is something we could potentially look at adding something more specific if councillors wanted that.
Are we looking to talk to our submission? Because I wonder if that's something that could be raised when we actually, if we present to council.
Yeah, we have signalled that we would like to be heard.
Okay, thank you. Liz.
Yeah. Hey, look, thanks for the submission. I thought it was, actually it was excellent. Look, this plan change is of significant interest to Cambridge residents, no question around that. And obviously it's going through a process. A couple of things I noted. I guess the bigger voice really in Cambridge is about the out of sequence, the growth cell, you know, which is something that Waipa has always looked at its planning with great pride, and this private plan change is again out of sequence, and I guess makes it really difficult for council staff to plan when these situations pop out of the blue. So that tension, I think, between private plan or developers and that careful planning that has been done, I think there's tension there, and I think current developers who are looking to bring their sections to market, and there's a huge amount of infrastructure already in the ground, so that tension is real, and I'm sure councillors and the independent commissioners will be looking at that carefully when they're looking to go through the process. One of the things I did wonder about, and it sort of speaks probably to what Noel said, is that lack of integrated transport planning if this does get approved, and I wondered if we should include that in our submission. Cambridge Connections, as we know, is one train, but if we were asked at some point to provide any kind of public transport out there in the future, how can we plan when we've got these out of sequence things going on? Because right now we've got the growth cells are there, and I guess our team are carefully planning what extensions might be possible. But yeah, that's a bit of a tricky one. So yeah, just those are my comments, and thanks for the draft submission. I thought it was excellent.
Any comments around that transport? Just please, Tracy.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Just having a quick look at the submission, we do talk about transport and referring to urban form and transport. So we potentially will have a look at that and just beef up those comments, and obviously take it through yourself, Chair, to make sure we've captured those.
Yeah. Gary Maguire. Oh, you're good. Ben.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank you for the submission and agree with the councillors who are actually out in that area, Gary and Liz. I think it's a good submission because it's not opposing the principle, everything. It's saying there's one part, the rural land, the 5 to 2 hectares, is something that needs to be looked at. And also, you're simply saying the plan change does not currently provide sufficient evidence to demonstrate. So it gives them a chance to go back and provide the evidence, and we may change our opinion. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Kia ora, Raina.
Thanks, guys. Like I brought up earlier, the proximity of that plan change to the river, that's quite a concern for the river itself. And I do like the pieces you put in there about the river, making sure those do come to play. On top of all of that, the infrastructure, the water supply, the sewage supply, all of that stuff needs to, and I like what you put in your submissions and your opposing and changes. So I think we've done very good in this draft opposition of the areas that needs to be brought to the fore, so that we can say that we looked at really well. It's not about us stopping it; it's about making sure that the reason where our WRC is taking very good care of.
Thank you, Kia ora, Raina. So Councillor Mahuta has moved it. Are there any other? Thanks, Mikhail. If there are no other questions, all those in favour? Opposed? So carried. Thank you, ladies. The next item before us is item 7.5, which is the notice of motion for Local Government New Zealand membership on page 189. And so open the questions, comments with the mover of the motion, Noel.
Yes, thank you. And at this stage, I'll reserve my right of reply and also call for a division at the voting stage. This journey started quite some time back in the last triennium. Councillor Hughes raised a discussion point, and I seconded it so that it could go on the table and be discussed, which resulted in a flip-flop of the council with the current chair and a number of his cohorts strongly advocating for the removal of our council from the LGNZ and an equal number against, which then on the casting vote of the then chair, we went back into local government. So during the last campaign elections, a number of councillors campaigned on leaving local government New Zealand. You've heard the forum this morning speak about that. I've become concerned because I also supported that motion at the time to leave, that after 6 or 7 months, this council has achieved very little. You may be aghast at that statement, but we really haven't done anything substantial yet. And I asked questions about local government and whether we're staying in or whether we're going. The chair, in response to some questions, said that he wanted some time to work with Local Government New Zealand and particularly the regional sector, and hoped that he would be in a position to bring something back by April. So the motion originally tabled for March, it was moved to this meeting. So in the last 7 months, or perhaps 12 months since the matter was discussed at this council table, there has been little, if any, actual change in local government other than positions at the top table. As I described local government earlier this morning, it's a bit like the union, and I saw that coming through from the chief executive this morning, defending their position, advocating why they should still be there, much like a union. Didn't talk about what they had really achieved. They've got on behind the government, supporting CTB, which, if you've talked to your mayors and your local TA members, a CTB is not what this community deserves, needs, or should be imposed on. The community, as was spoken about, should be the one that designs the future. And I'm very much in the camp of the raising up of district and city functions into the regional entity based on catchments. So to go with a CTB under the initial proposal would be a mistake in my view. So what has been achieved? All we've got is a lot of promises, what will be achieved, what the changes have been. Is it too little, too late? Does it really matter because there's only another 3 years, 2.5 years if we can? So I did a calculation earlier on, $140,000 a year on a 150 million budget, and correct me if I'm too far out with that, is 0.0009 of our budget. So it's insignificant. So really it comes down to not the money, whether the council union, Local Government New Zealand, is actually achieving for our community at large. And that's really what it comes down to me. So, Warren, I challenge you now, at some stage during this process, if council is to not vote to withdraw from Local Government New Zealand, you need to take this opportunity to explain to the constituency that supported your team of rates control as to why the council should remain within. This is your opportunity to explain to the community. And once this matter is decided one way or the other, hopefully that will end it and we can move on and focus on the real issues. So, but this expenditure, we have talked about it for nearly 2 years and little has been achieved. I also said to you, to your face the other day, have you got involved? You're in the centre of the baubles of office. Have you become just like the last chair? And we laughed about it. But the reality is you need to tell us through your experience why you're supporting staying in at this stage, which is the 100% U-turn on where you were prior to the election. So I'll leave it there at the moment. I've got more to say, but I'll leave that for the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Noel. Are there any other comments? Okay.
Yeah, thanks, Warren, and thanks, Noel and everybody. I know it's a very contentious subject, and I have the dubious honour of coming in after all this, the previous stuff happened. I don't disagree with the intent at the time. I think it was probably the right thing, but what we have now is a totally different scenario that we're in with the reform of the local government. I think, and I'll put it on the line, I support staying in because it's a very astute political move, and it's in this day and age, it's also knowing where your threats are as well as where your opportunities are, and that's being involved with all the players in this field. I am very suspicious that Local Government New Zealand basically gave the current government the formula for their reform. But as we found out, the government really only gave us the intent of reform, but all they gave us was a big cardboard box with nothing in it. And so what we have to do now is build to get a better future out of it. In terms of my support for staying in, I would be requesting that Local Government New Zealand and I excuse my pronunciation, but Te Uru Kahiki, yep, should actually merge into one organisation and work collectively for the good of all ratepayers to get the best outcome. I don't think we heard that today, and so I would be putting some preconditions on staying that, as Robbie correctly suggested, give them a year, give them some guidelines, rails to adhere to, and don't cut off our noses to spite our faces in this process. I think it's really, really important. We keep all linkages going. It's all about who you know and the process of communication rather than just putting yourself into a rabbit hole and hiding.
Thank you, Keith. Tipper online.
Kia ora. Thank you, Noel, for bringing this to a final point. Timely that we make this decision today so we can either work with the regional sector as they are or do something different. I think we've taken far too long on this conversation. There's been value in this network from my first triennium until now. It's had different lanes. I've noted this morning it was accused of being very left. It's been very right before too, but it doesn't really matter. It matters the type of relationship we can form with central government, who have now finally turned to local government in New Zealand. That's the only thing that's changed. They've stopped treating LGNZ as the enemy, so therefore we are now not treating them as the enemy. That aside, I think Te Maruata has been a strong forum within LGNZ. It has always supported its Māori members, so for that part, my support of LGNZ, when we've had strong and clear leadership, we've used that network well. So that's what I look forward to, if that's who we're going to be in this next round. If we're going to be begrudging members, then that's a waste of anybody's money, whether in there to lead it or in there to just pay our membership. Kia ora.
Thank you, Tipper. Ben.
Yeah, I'm supportive of staying in local government for one more year and to hold them to account. We're going through the greatest transformation of local government in 40 years. And firstly, in terms of controlling rates, I am completely on board with controlling rates. I'd just like to point out that we've gone from 5.7% last year to 1.4% this year, and I intend it to possibly go even lower. So the controlling rates part is still there. I also signed a pledge to oppose any measures that will see the total burden of rates, levies and additional council charges exceed the level of inflation population growth. They don't. We're well under inflation at the moment. So as far as I'm concerned...
Chairman, he's off topic. He's off topic.
Excuse me, Noel. I'm
always off topic.
The comments raised by presenters this morning were on rates control team and their campaigning. Thank you.
And their campaigning.
Get right.
Yeah. So I just intend to I continue to state that I continue to support controlling rates, and I will continue to do so. I personally believe that while there was indications from government that there may be amalgamation coming, on the 10th of October last year, there was no proposal. On the 25th of November, a bombshell dropped, which was basically that regional councils are dissolved, CTBs are formed, there's no government funding coming in. All of the change is going to happen by taking away regional councillor funding and bringing in the CTBs. That, I believe, is unyielding, undemocratic and unworkable. And I believe we need to fight against it. And so that's why I think we need all of the support from other regional councils around the country, as well as the council TAs, which is why we need to network together on this process. Local Government New Zealand is a simple way of doing that. And as Tipper mentioned, they now appear to have the ear of government who is looking for centralised functions. Noel made a point before. He says that the LGNZ have been advocating for combined territory boards. In actual fact, Noel, that's not correct. They've actually advocated for the combined territory boards will be most effective if they have a single clear purpose to develop reorganisation plans. They have actually helped advocate that mayors are not in favour of becoming on the CTBs and that the regional functions should continue throughout this process. We do need some form of reorganisation, but when we're going through the reorganisation, we need as many wins as possible and as many allies as possible and the ability to network across regions. So for that reason, I'm happy to support one more year funding for Local Government New Zealand.
Thank you, Ben. Mikhail.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Probably all you know in the last term and in the beginning of this term, I've always stood for rates control and providing people with the cheapest rates that we can possibly get, especially for my region, because a lot of them are retirees, and it's a lot harder to come up with the money to with the rate rises that have been happening over the last 3 years. And yes, I was one that wanted to vote out of LGNZ, but obviously, as Councillor Dunbar Smith said, that it was a bit of a bombshell after the election that suddenly this government reform came in. So I've done a lot of thinking over the last 7 months, and to me, this is the biggest challenge that this regional council is coming up against. And I think that we need all the help, and LGNZ has got the ears of ministers, as you heard this morning, and I think that they're another tool to help us get to where we think as a region, not only as a region, but also the 10 TAs and Hamilton in that region, to get the best that we can for the ratepayers. My end goal at the end of this term, whether it finishes at the end of 27 or 28, is to leave knowing that I've done the best possible job in my position that my ratepayers have voted me in, to make sure that their rates are affordable, not only in the whole region, but definitely down in the Taupo Rotorua region. So to me, this is another tool by staying in LGNZ to help facilitate that. I've said before in this forum that we feel as though Taupo is right at the end of the region, and we feel as though that with this government reform that we might be left out of the big picture. So I think, with LGNZ being in that central government capacity, that they'll help the region rural sector of that. So I'll be voting to stay in.
Thank you, Mikhail. Robbie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've been on the fence the whole way through this, and so mine would be the guardrails of what we want to achieve out of LGNZ over the next 12 months. And if that can't be met, is a clear voice goes back to LGNZ every quarter from this council, from the going back reporting that they're not meeting our standard if we're to stay in. So I'd like that whatever's decided today, that there's, as I said, there's some good guardrails around it. If it's, as I said in the thing, them to come up at least twice, speak to us during that year, reporting back every quarterly, and most probably every council meeting, reporting back to them, are they actually doing anything for us as well? So we only have 10 council meetings a year, basically, I suppose. So it's reporting that we're actually happy with them or not, and what's going on. So that's the sort of guardrails I'd like around it for me to support it. So I'll leave that out there. So I haven't made a decision.
Jennifer.
Thank you, Noel, for raising it. Second, the comments from Tipa and Rob. Yeah, I agree. Lean into it or don't bother. I have been quite open-minded on that. I consistently stay enough and felt a lot of benefit over the years, 10 years, 7 years. But I don't support reducing our influence in this once-in-a-generation opportunity to reform local government at this time. It'll be for the benefit of our communities as a whole. And I want to talk, just in light of first deputation, I want to speak in support of our chair, and that I believe he speaks well for our region as a whole. And I've been impressed how he's delivering on the election promises he's had, specifically around the work for our CEO's KPI, the new KPI, to find more savings. Because like Noel said, this isn't, this is small amounts it's not what it's about. It's always been quite a populist idea. But we have high hopes for that KPI, and I'm simply staying in LGNZ to give Warren an opportunity to speak well for us in there and in all our other audiences that we get.
Thank you. Gary Maguire.
I'll reiterate what I said this morning. I think that we were ankle tapped after the election with that surprise that you're here, you're gone. I don't feel that was a fair deal or democratic. The last thing that I would want to do is to ankle tap Warren and his work where he's representing us and fighting for us, and he needs every tool in the toolbox that he can get. So for that, I'd park my previous take the head off attitude, and I will vote to stay in. But that would be conditional on them fronting up, proving via Warren. Warren will report back to us and tell us whether they're giving us support or not. If they're not supporting, if they're not helping us with our farmers and our issues that we have here, then I would be the first to say, take the head off. And so I'll give them the support this time now, but it's conditional.
Thanks, Gary. Gary Roma.
I didn't hear anything this morning from the members of LGNZ to really convince me that they had a case. They were asked a very simple question from Councillor Hughes about what policies have changed. And we got a long-winded answer, but the answer was actually nothing. And so they had a chance to state their case. They had a chance to even say what policies and identify and outline what they were doing. And I think they failed to do that. So somewhat concerned is that the players may have changed, but a leopard doesn't change its spots. And so I'm really concerned about the changes and whether they're meaningful or significant, and whether the few personnel changes can have an impact on the organisation. So I wasn't here for the last council, but there was obviously a lot of debate, and we heard a lot of it in the field. And so I think where the council got to is probably the right spot, and I've seen nothing to change my thinking on it.
Thank you, Gary. Angela.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting debating this one again. I'll bring up some of my points that I made last time, as well as a few new ones. Just to start off, I'll echo Jen's thoughts around that. It's really pragmatic that our chair is in the influential position within the regional sector, because as other speakers have said, regional unity is really vital at this time. Our biggest investments as a council are flood protection and transport, and we often, in order to get those efficiencies in those spaces, we often ask staff, what are other regional councils doing? And having our chair right at the centre of those forums is really important to get that consistency and ideas from other regional councils. As I said last time, you don't make changes from outside the tent. Staying inside gives us the most influence. We heard from Scott, the CE, this morning, and just to bring up a few of his points, the invitation to join the reference groups. There's 4 reference groups that we, as elected members, could join. And I think that there are a lot of members around our table who could add a lot in that space. So I would challenge you, if we do stay in LGNZ, that you join those reference groups and advocate for our communities. One of them is financial sustainability and cost-effective local government. Could think of a number of you that would be fantastic in that space. Current and future infrastructure needs. Third one, resilient regional communities, economies and environments. And lastly, responsive and accountable local government system, including structure. So my challenge to my councillors around the table, put your money where your mouth is and your time where what you're saying. Just to the points of policy changes within LGNZ, my experience with going to conferences is that process to change policies happens through the AGM. So that opportunity would be coming up later this year. And remits are a great way to make policy change. So look forward to those thoughtful policies that we want to enact through that process. I'd advocate for staying at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Angela. I won't go to any other speakers because I know there's a couple hanging out to speak last, so I'll jump in here now. So what I would say, just picking up on some of the points around the room, is that like any organisation, you get out what you put in, and noting Angela's challenge in that space. Zone 2 is a space that I don't know how many of you have been to, and potentially most of you have been to at least one meeting. That is at no cost. So zone 2, for us to attend Zone 2, it's here in Hamilton, it's regular, you can have input in that space, and you can drive regional input into that space. So there's an easy piece to pick up. Yes, I was against it last triennium, and basically for three issues. I thought they weren't working with the government, so they had this anti-government direction. They lacked regional advocacy, and were too focused in on the TAs, and they were financially inept, as Brett pointed out this morning. Now, you've asked what's changed. So the changes are, when Gary, that they can change their spots, and a lot of that is who's around the top table. So we've seen Scott Necklin step up now. The old CE's gone. That old CE was part of the financially inept space. You know, they lost over $500,000 over 2 previous years. Their current books are sitting at a $250,000 surplus, and they're currently being audited. So financially, they've stepped up into that space. Secondly, you've got Dion Swigs as our regional chair, so Environment Canterbury. So another big region with a lot of TAs within their region. So there's the similarities, and you've got Rhea Schultz, who's a unitary chair, mayor. So by changing those positions around the table, we are getting a lot more regional input into that space. We are being asked as a region, what do we want to push local government New Zealand, what directions do we want to push for your region? And this is where it sits. It's not only the restructure of local government, it's the RMA. You know, if we want, let's say we want our drainage districts to be permitted activities, that's something we can take to local government. Not only can we push it with our own ministerial contacts, we can get local government to drive that messaging too. So there's a real value. The networking piece for me has been huge too. It's where I brought back from talking to Wellington Regional Chair, what they did with bus depots. You know, to me, that stimulated our conversation with Hamilton City. There's a lot of networking value. All good businesses network. So it's right across that space, and it's not me, just me. Look, I take on what's come out of this is that reporting needs to come back clear. I heard a commitment this morning that Scott will come back into this chambers at least twice a year, and more if needed. Some of that reporting falls back on my lap too, and onto my shoulders. So I need to make sure that everything I'm seeing and hearing you guys are across. The other thing I did, I looked at alternatives. So I looked at, could we bring governance into Te Urukai Hika? And basically, no. It's what happens is that's an organisation, as you will know, that's in the technical detail. That's down with the CEs, but it is taking regional concerns and issues and working on them. As we heard with the After the Deluge, they looked at priority projects, they put scaling to them, and then LGNZ itself advocated into ministry, and there was a $200 million outcome out of that. They are not resourced to do governance at this stage. There would be no financial saving to them upscaling their resource to do governance at this stage, and that would also be a timely piece. So that wouldn't happen over the next, say, 12 months with the work that they've got going on currently. So I did look at alternatives and whether there could be some space in that. Currently, to me, that's just not a viable option. They are getting more buy-in and more engagement with ministers. I spoke to Vanessa Blakely up at UNISA last week, and just asked her, are you seeing that happen? And she said, yes, I am seeing ministers get more buy-in to LGNs. They're talking to them more often. The fuel crisis, they're coming back to the LGN structure to get their messaging out there. There's a email arrived on my desk late last night from ministers around the fuel security, so I'll forward that out there, but that's coming back through LGNZ. So we're seeing that engagement. But what I go back to is we need to drive this. So yes, I understand, councillors are looking for guardrails and reporting back. Totally supportive of that, and more than happy, Robbie, if you wanted an LGNZ report item on the council agenda every month, then more than happy to do that as another means of communicating what's going on or potentially what's not going on. So look, I'll leave that there. But I have seen change. So those issues that I voted against last time, I've seen those turn around, and I am seeing that input back in. And as I say, we're all aware it's a really critical time for us to have a united regional voice, as well as we can paddle our own waka too, Gary. So it's something we have our own MP contacts, we have our own minister contacts, and that's critical. The Waikato is a region that has a lot of challenges and that sort of thing, and a lot of differences. And we can articulate that, and that's not for LGNZ, but where we have regional messaging and that points we want to get across, this is a tool, and that cost of that tool is actually shared by all those councils that belong, is a tool that we can use, and it's another avenue into ministers, into officials, into those backroom officials that actually tend to write policy and that sort of thing. So that's our input there. So I'll leave that there. I see another light on, so Liz.
Yeah, no, thank you, Warren. Look, I was really interested in what I wanted to wait until I heard from you, actually, because we haven't really had a conversation about this. Those of you that know, I've had a long history with LGNZ. I've been to many conferences over the years. I've been regular at the rural provincial sector meetings in Wellington as well. I've been there 2 years, and plus more actually. And to be honest, it's always been a little underwhelming for me, and that's probably due to the fact that I think LGNZ have been lost for probably quite a long time. But also, I've been also attended the Zone 2 meetings, which have been pretty poorly attended actually by across the zone, to be fair. I thought I saw some good attendance from the Regional Council just at the last one, but otherwise, it hasn't really taken our interest, and that's perhaps something to do with the agenda. I'm not too sure, but what it really comes down to is something that Warren just said now. And that is, we need to drive it. So if we want to make this work, we have to actually start driving the work. So I kind of, where my mind goes to is, well, can we achieve more with that money by doing things more ourselves? Or should we sort of start to look at, how can we affect change from the inside? Knowing, of course, that there's other avenues like the mayoral forum and things like that. It was good to see the whites of their eyes this morning, First time I've seen LGNZ speak a bit more, I guess, around what the future might hold and the changes that they might make. Like to see, like Gary said, see that in. I'd like to see more of a commitment and some action around that space as well, because we want to see value. But I guess the way I'll vote today will be, a little bit. I want to hear from a few more people, but Chris is one of them. But good to see, Warren, your enthusiasm for this, because, this is what's going to make the difference, I think. And in fact, if other leaders from around the region can perhaps commit to what you're committing to, it might just drive LGNZ even harder. I think that's probably what I want to see, because right now, for me, it's been a whole lot of very little for a really long time. But hey, if there's a commitment from the leaders and the mayors, and the chair to really have some consequences and reporting and all those sorts of things that Robbie talked about. Yeah, actually, you know what? I could be persuaded to stay for another year.
Yeah, thank you, Liz.
Chris, we need to do an amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
So if that passes or fails, can we do an amendment after that of what we're asking from LGNZ? No. If it's passed or failed. No.
Chris.
What, going to the pub and not having a drink, Robbie? Okay, thank you. Some of you will have heard this before, but my apologies, but I'm going to repeat myself anyway. Some others have had the licence. LGNZ needed to be non-partisan, in my view. The presentations at the 2000 conference were largely, although not entirely, pushing a certain agenda. For example, only one narrative on climate change. I will not expand on the obvious hostility to the Prime Minister who spoke at the conference. In my view, this was unbecoming of anybody purporting to represent ratepayers and council interests in Wellington. What I was looking for this morning when I asked about the change in policies, the admitted meeting with the Prime Minister, there was no apology given to the Prime Minister, and he confirmed that when I spoke to him last week. That is, to me, significant. Doesn't signal too much change. Our chair has circulated a paper extolling the virtues of LGNZ membership and spoken to it this morning. Lacking from that paper or any actual future commitments to a change in LGNZ policies, which I asked them about this morning, which could have included a realignment of thinking towards support for the policies and direction of travel of the current coalition government. To see LGNZ has just become yet another union promulgating the same theories and strategies typical of such organisations. Nowhere in that paper did I see any reference to those who elect councillors, that being our ratepayers. Our voters must be front of mind. When we make decisions, I would have expected LGNZ to be similarly mindful of its responsibilities, that it is supposed to represent a majority of ratepayers of New Zealand. That fact seems to be lost on some councillors who sit around this table. LGNZ are ignoring the sentiment of a large proportion of its membership. This is being corrected as more councils exercise their democratic right to resign their membership of LGNZ. Eventually, those that are left, our members, will by default represent the left-leaning sentiment and direction of future travel of LGNZ. A number of LGNZ submissions in the past year did not represent my views, with most obvious being the vehement opposition to the Treaty Principles Bill. In my view, a bill on which WRC had no right to waste ratepayers' money, making a submission which was largely a cut and paste of that provided by LGNZ. This was certainly not WRC mandated business. There is much made of LGNZ's ability to advocate on behalf of members to central government. We, the WRC councillors, have the ability to advocate directly to government through local MPs. We are fortunate to have active MPs who are very accessible and active in advocating for the region. As an example, I cite the actions of Tama Potaka, who successfully, having all three key roading projects for the region included in the National Policy Statement for the NZTA funding plan before the 2023 election. And that came about because of his attendance at a meeting here with councillors, and some of you were at that meeting. Ministers and other members of the coalition are regular visitors to the region and generally seem willing to engage with councillors and listen to our concerns. In fact, we are probably our own worst enemies, and the stated intent to close regional councils is more likely an indication that central government is frustrated with listening to our problems. The RMA replacement acts are their answer. To those who have remained loyal to the policies of the rates control team, I say thank you. And I know from many conversations email received from ratepayers who gave the rates control team the mandate to deliver cost savings and therefore lower rates increases for the WRC, they are most appreciative of our actions to date. However, if the council votes for WRC to remain as a fully paid member of LGNZ, this will be seen as a betrayal of that trust, all right, by the ratepayers that voted for you to get you into this council. If you vote against this resolution to resign from LGNZ, I respectfully suggest you consider that vote as an end of your aspirations to being a trusted politician, and my advice is don't bother standing for public office in future. WRC resignations from LGNZ are seen as possible after the election was stated in the policies of the rates control team. I have a copy of it here. If anybody doesn't believe me, it was policy number 8. And you cannot deny that, Ben, that was there. We knew there was reorganisation coming. We were told about it. And to try and perform now and say you didn't know about it is just plain dishonest. For myself, there are a number of issues supporting WRC resignation from LGNZ now, not in the future. We campaigned on WRC resigning at the first meeting after the election, plus ensuring the savings would commence as soon as possible, but not later than 30 June 26 when our subscription ended. This is, to me, is a matter of principle. As far as I'm concerned, if you say you're going to do something, if elected to represent the ratepayers, then that is your commitment to those voters and ratepayers. To do otherwise is a betrayal of that trust and simply unacceptable. I ask that all those councillors who voted in favour of WRC resigning from LGNZ last year do so again. That was your pledge to ratepayers as a member of RCT. Now, I'm happy to go on and answer the questions that have been raised around the table, but you've probably heard enough from me by now. You know where I stand on the thing. And if people vote against it, so be it, but that's on your head. Thank you. Just something, Warren, in terms of the financials, I would like to know, the reason that there was a turnaround this year is that there's nearly $1 million worth of consulting income in there. That's where the profits come from, or the surpluses come from. No explanation, no notes, just a 968,000 introduced into there.
So as I stated, Chris, those accounts are currently being audited.
And then 2025.
And then
2025.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Okay.
So the current accounts are being audited. Yeah.
And I agree with
always
Gary.
Presented. Yeah.
Local government, I don't believe will change its spots, and nothing I heard this morning convinced me otherwise.
Thank you. Noel, your right to exercise your right of reply. That is correct. Thank you. You'll need your microphone on. If it's not, I can't see the light. Yep.
It's on.
I
Okay.
can mute it.
So thank you to all who have contributed to the discussion and for those who turned up before the meeting to give us their views. Way back when this all started before the last council, Chris put up a resolution and it languished for a moment or two, and I decided pro forma or whatever the word, to support it because I wanted it discussed. And then the motion was to leave, and then it came back to council, and I had a time of speaking with the chief executive and really asked what those reasons were, and he clarified a number of issues for me, which I commented on at the time. The reality is, and then I instead of abstaining in the first vote, I supported the removal in the second, and then the chair's vote, as we know, to say. So where are we at? We had an election. There were a number of promises that were made by a number of people. I too thought that at the time, and as standing, and I clarify, I stood as an independent and remain very strongly an independent person with the right to choose what subject I support and don't support. Today brings to head waiting for 7 months for rates control to take the initiative. I believe that LGNZ has changed. They need time to change. Are we prepared to give them that time? That is for you to make the decision today. My purpose behind putting this motion is I had enough of emails, contacts, phone calls. Why haven't you left LGNZ? It's not my role to choose whether we leave or not. It's our role to choose whether we leave or not. Talking to members of the rates control team, nothing seemed to go anywhere. So I've taken the initiative to bring this to a head. We decide today, and I would hope if we decide today, that's it. 12 months' time, we're in or we're out. So I can go on, but one thing I will make an observation, listening to people who have articulated the reasons why we should stay, step back and reflect on it. All those reasons were there 12, 18 months ago when we decided. They are not new. So changing some seats in the deck chairs hasn't changed anything. So you have to live with your conscience, those who vote against the motion. You have to front up to the electorate if you have aspirations of remaining in local government or other organisations. So you will be judged today, and as Councillor Hughes has alluded to, people do have memories. So I don't say that as a threat, but I just, through experience, this is my 19th year around a council table. Some water under the bridge there. So I don't want to go on and on, so I'll leave it at that and urge you to consider not what's best for you individually. I've heard comments that some think that now that they're commissioners under the RMA that they could end up as commissioners in any CTB or whatever. That's absolute nonsense. You're not directors of a board, you're commissioners of an RMA, which is a very small thing. If that was true, if that statement that's come back to me is any a semblance of truth. So long story short, be prepared to be judged on what you decide today. Do what's best for the community, not yourself. Thank you.
As we always do. So the motion before us is to local government membership that council revokes the resolution WRC 25114 and withdraw from Local Government New Zealand ending council membership. We have a mover in Councillor Smith and a seconder in Councillor Hughes, and we have division called.
Could I just clarify? So voting for this means what? Voting against it means what?
Dave will clarify that once he turns his mic on.
Good afternoon, members. As the chair has mentioned, we have this resolution before us. If you support or vote for this motion, you are voting to withdraw and leave Local Government New Zealand. If you oppose the motion, you are voting to remain as members of Local Government New Zealand. Just to make it really clear, so supporting the motion equals leaving LGNZ. So given the division has been called, I'll call your names. Please turn on your mic and indicate if you support, oppose or abstain from the motion before us.
He's going to circle one. One will get struck out. Yeah.
I will start with the mover of the motion, Councillor Smith. And for Councillor Stolwick.
Oppose.
Councillor Strange.
It's quick, I'm normally last. Oppose.
Councillor Cookson.
Oppose.
Councillor Downard.
Oppose.
Councillor Dunbar Smith.
Oppose.
Councillor Hodge. You pop your mic on, please.
Oppose.
Thank you. Councillor Holmes.
Oppose.
Councillor Hughes.
Support.
Councillor Ma.
Oppose.
Councillor Mahuta. It will come back. Councillor Maguire.
Oppose.
Councillor Nicol.
Oppose.
Councillor Raymer.
Support.
Councillor Mahuta. The motion is lost, 10 votes to 3, with no abstentions and no response from Councillor Mahuta.
Thank you. Thank you for that. So let's hope that does put that to bed. We are expecting to see a lot more reporting and information coming back along those channels, and happy to be a conduit for that as well. Robbie.
Can we state some actions, please?
Sorry?
Actions that we need to, since we're staying in, that
There's no actions attached to the motion.
No, I know.
I have an understanding of what reporting is required, etc. Carrying this forward.
Are you going to circulate that after the meeting then?
We can discuss it in council only for sure.
Well, I'd like that circulated as quick as possible after this, because we're going to be going.
There are no actions attached to this.
I know, but I would like there to be a stand of what we are as a council are asking for LGNZ because I'm going to have media asking me why did I vote, and I want to have a position of why I voted that way.
Well, everybody outlined their reasons. So look, we don't. The motion's passed. It's gone.
Absolutely. So, but just in terms of discussion on this issue, as I understand it, we were looking at a monthly report back to council about what's been happening at Local Government New Zealand and quarterly meetings with them to give us feedback.
And there's a full recording of what councillor spoke of. Yeah.
So that's the expectation. So you will take it on board that the expectations raised through the meeting will be
as I've indicated. Yep.
Yep. Thank you.
Thank you. Right, that brings us to the end of the meeting. Thank you very much, councillors. I'll get Chris to close with a karakia. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, councillors. Unahia mai te uru tapanui, kia wātia, kia māma, te nākau, te tingana, te hinanaro, e te ara takatū, koe rā e rongo, e whakaaria aki ke runga, kia tina, homiai, huiai, tai kiei.
No, those minutes were passed in the accepting of receiving of the minutes. So council meeting closed at 12:21.